Park Ji-ho walked slowly through the empty halls of the Galactic Council's Museum of Ancient Civilizations. His footsteps echoed in the quiet space as he made his way to the exhibit that had fascinated him for the past 3 years. The sign above the entrance read, "Extinct Species Wing" in 12 different alien languages. Inside the massive chamber sat the pride of the museum's collection. The human warship called UES Defiance stretched 800 meters from nose to tail. Its dark gray hull was covered in scars and blast marks from some ancient battle. Most visitors saw it as proof that humans had been a violent, primitive species that destroyed themselves. Ji-ho saw something different. The ship looked powerful, even in its silent state. Unlike the smooth, curved designs favored by modern alien civilizations, the human vessel was angular and brutal. Thick armor plates covered every surface. Massive gun barrels stuck out from armored turrets. It looked like something built for war and war alone. Still staring at that old relic, Ji-ho? Kim Nara's voice came from behind him. The museum curator walked up to stand beside him, her datapad filled with the day's visitor reports. "It's not just a relic," Ji-ho said quietly. "Look at the construction. These humans built this ship to last. Every system has backup systems. Every component can be repaired or replaced. This isn't the work of primitives." Nara sighed. She had heard this speech many times before. Ji-ho, humans have been extinct for 200 years. The hegemony found their home system completely dead, no life, no signals, nothing. They killed themselves with their own weapons. "That's what everyone believes," Ji-ho replied. "But I've been studying the ship's design for 3 years. The more I learn, the more I think we're missing something important." Before Nara could respond, the sound of many voices filled the chamber. A tour group was arriving, led by Ambassador Vexistai of the hegemony. The tall, blue-skinned alien wore the elaborate robes of his office and spoke in the loud, confident voice of someone used to being obeyed. "And here we see the greatest example of why violence leads only to extinction," Vextai announced to his group of 20 alien dignitaries. "Behold the warship of the humans, a species so focused on destruction that they ultimately destroyed themselves." The tour group laughed at the ambassador's words. Ji-ho felt his hands clench into fists. He had watched this scene play out dozens of times, but it never got easier. Vextai pointed at the ship's main guns with his walking stick. Notice the primitive kinetic weapons. While civilized species had already developed energy shields and plasma cannons, humans were still throwing metal projectiles at their enemies. Barbaric and ineffective. "Actually," Ji-ho called out, unable to stay quiet any longer, "kinetic weapons have several advantages over energy-based systems. They require less power, they're harder to defend against, and they're much more reliable." The tour group turned to stare at him. Vextai's face showed clear annoyance. "Dr. Park, isn't it? The xenoarchaeologist who thinks humans might still be alive somewhere?" The ambassador's tone made it clear what he thought of that idea. "I think the evidence suggests we don't know the full story of what happened to humanity," Ji-ho said carefully. Vextai laughed, and his tour group joined in. "The evidence, Dr. Park, is that their entire solar system is now a lifeless wasteland. No signals, no ships, no trace of their civilization. They are extinct, and this museum piece is all that remains of their failed species." The ambassador turned back to his group. "Notice also the crude nuclear reactors powering this vessel. While modern ships use clean fusion cores, humans relied on dangerous atomic fission. It's a wonder they didn't accidentally blow up their own ships." Ji-ho bit his tongue. The ship's power systems were actually far more advanced than most people realized. He had spent months studying the reactor design and found it to be incredibly efficient and nearly impossible to overload. But pointing that out would only bring more mockery. "The armor plating is also worth noting," Vextai continued. "Thick, heavy, and inflexible. Modern shields are far superior, providing protection while maintaining ship mobility. These humans were so afraid of being hurt that they built their ships like flying fortresses." "Perhaps they had good reason to be afraid," Nara said quietly, but only Ji-ho heard her. The tour continued for another 30 minutes. Vextai pointed out every aspect of the ship that he considered primitive or barbaric. The simple computer systems, the basic life support, the lack of any luxury amenities for the crew. To him, it all proved that humans had been a species focused only on war and destruction. Finally, the tour group moved on to see other exhibits. Jiho and Nara were left alone with the silent warship once again. "I hate these tours," Nara admitted. "It feels wrong to mock the dead like this." "They're not dead," Jiho said firmly. "I'm sure of it." "What makes you so certain?" Nara asked. "Everyone else in the galaxy believes the humans are extinct." Jiho pulled out his own datapad and showed her a series of energy readings. "For the past 6 months, I've been taking detailed scans of the ship. Look at these power signatures from the core sections." Nara studied the data. "These readings show minimal energy output. That's normal for a ship that's been dead for centuries." "Look closer," Jiho insisted. "The energy isn't random, it follows patterns, cycles, almost like a heartbeat." Nara finished, her eyes widening. "Exactly. This ship isn't dead, Nara, it's sleeping." Before Nara could respond, both of their datapads started beeping with an urgent message. They read it in silence, their faces growing pale. The message was from the Galactic Council's Deep Space Monitoring Station. Long-range sensors had detected massive energy signatures in the Outer Rim territories. The signatures matched no known alien technology, but they did match one thing in the database: human technology. "This is impossible," Nara whispered. The readings showed dozens of ships, maybe hundreds. Jiho looked up at the silent warship towering above them. For just a moment he thought he saw one of the running lights flicker. When he looked again, it was dark. "I need to access the ship's computer systems," he said urgently. "If humans are really returning, this ship might be our only way to communicate with them." "Jiho, you know the rules. The ship is off limits to researchers. Too dangerous. The hegemony made those rules to keep people from learning the truth," Jiho replied. "But if there really are human ships coming back, everything is about to change." Nara was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then she made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "I can get you access," she said quietly. "But it has to be tonight after the museum closes, and if we're caught, I'll lose my job and you'll probably be arrested." "It's worth the risk," Jiho said. "If I'm right about this ship, we need to understand it before the humans arrive. Because if they're anything like this vessel, the galaxy is not prepared for what's coming." That night, after the last visitor had left and the security systems had switched to night mode, Nara led Jiho through the service corridors to the ship's docking port. The massive airlock had been sealed for decades, but Nara's curator access code still worked. As they stepped aboard the human warship, emergency lighting flickered on automatically. The corridors were wide and functional, with no decoration or luxury. Everything was built for efficiency and durability. "The main computer core should be this way," Jiho said, consulting his datapad. "I've studied the ship's blueprints for months." They made their way deeper into the vessel, passing empty crew quarters and abandoned workstations. The ship felt haunted, as if the spirits of its crew still walked these halls. When they reached the computer core, Jiho began connecting his equipment to the human systems. It took several tries to establish a connection, but eventually his datapad began displaying information from the ship's database. "I'm in," he said excitedly. "The computer is still functional. Most systems are in hibernation mode, but the core programming is intact." "What does it say about the crew?" Nara asked. Jiho's fingers moved quickly across his datapad as he searched. Through the ship's records, what he found made his blood run cold. "Nara, this ship wasn't abandoned. The crew, they're still here." "What do you mean?" "The ship has been empty for 2 centuries. "Not empty. Sleeping." Jiho's voice was barely a whisper. "The ship has a cryobay. Deep hibernation systems. The crew has been in suspended animation this entire time." Before Nara could respond, every light on the ship suddenly blazed to life. Warning alarms began sounding throughout the vessel, and from speakers all around them came a voice that hadn't been heard in over 200 years. Human voice. "Unknown beings, you have accessed a restricted vessel of the United Earth Space Navy. Identify yourselves immediately or face defensive measures. Jiho and Nara looked at each other in terror and amazement. The ship that everyone had mocked as a dead relic was waking up. And somewhere deep in its halls, the crew was beginning to wake up too. Outside the museum, hegemony security forces were already moving. The energy signatures from the ship had triggered every alarm on the station. Ambassador Vexitai was screaming orders into his communicator, demanding that the dangerous relic be destroyed immediately. But it was too late. The message was already spreading across the galaxy's communication networks. The humans were not extinct. They were returning. And they had been watching and waiting all along. The war, the human voice echoed through the corridors of the UES Defiance, cold and mechanical yet unmistakably alive. Jiho and Nara stood frozen in the computer core, their hands trembling as they stared at the now active displays surrounding them. Unknown beings, you have 30 seconds to identify yourselves before defensive protocols are initiated, the voice repeated. We're friends, Jiho called out, his voice cracking. We're researchers. We've been taking care of your ship. Silence filled the air for several long seconds. Then the voice spoke again, but this time it sounded more human, less mechanical. Researchers? You are not human. What species are you, and how long have we been inactive? I'm Park Jiho, xenoarchaeologist from the planet Kepler 442b. This is Kim Nara, curator of the museum where your ship has been kept safe. You've been dormant for over 200 years. 200 years. The voice trailed off. Computer, run full system diagnostics. Check crew status and external threat assessment. Warning lights began flashing throughout the ship as systems that had been silent for centuries suddenly roared to life. Deep in the vessel's core, massive engines began their startup sequence with a sound like distant thunder. My name is Captain Yang Minho, the voice said. I was ship's AI coordinator before entering hibernation. Where exactly is my vessel currently located? Concordia Prime, Nara answered. The neutral station operated by the Galactic Council. Your ship is in our Museum of Ancient Civilizations. A long pause. A museum? They put us in a museum? The galaxy believes humans are extinct, Jiho explained quickly. Your home system shows no signs of life. Everyone thinks your species destroyed itself in a war. Extinct? Captain Yang's voice carried a note of bitter amusement. I suppose that was the point. Computer, what is the status of our deep space monitoring systems? New displays activated around the computer core, showing star charts and energy signatures. That meant nothing to Jiho and Nara, but seemed to excite the awakening ship's systems. Captain, the ship's computer announced in a different voice, I am detecting multiple human fleet signatures in the outer rim. Estimated arrival time at this location, 72 hours. Confirmed. Signal the fleet and inform them we have made contact with local species. Prepare for full awakening protocol. Wait, Nara interrupted. You need to know that the galactic hegemony controls most of this region of space. They're the ones who found your ship and brought it here. They're not friendly toward humans. Define not friendly, Captain Yang said. They use your ship as proof that violence leads to extinction, Jiho explained. They bring tour groups to mock human technology and culture. They believe humans were primitive and barbaric. Another long silence. When Captain Yang spoke again, his voice was colder. I see. And what do you two believe? I believe the galaxy has seriously underestimated humanity, Jiho said firmly. I've spent 3 years studying your ship. The technology is far more advanced than anyone realizes. Nara? I think we've made a terrible mistake, she admitted. We should have tried to wake you up years ago instead of treating you like a museum display. Computer, begin crew revival sequence. Priority awakening for senior staff only. Keep the ship in standby mode until I give further orders. Yang, what's happening? This was a new voice, female and groggy with sleep. Commander Choi Suman, you're needed on the bridge. We have a situation. Throughout the ship, hibernation pods began opening for the first time in 2 centuries. The crew of the UES Defiance was waking up to find their world completely changed. Outside the museum, chaos was spreading through Concordia Prime. The massive energy signature from the human ship had triggered every alarm on the station. Security forces were mobilizing, and panic was spreading through the civilian population. Lee Hyunwoo, the museum's security chief, burst through the airlock just as Jiho and Nara were trying to explain the situation to Captain Yang. "What have you two done?" he demanded. "The entire station is in emergency lockdown. The hegemony is sending warships. They think we're under attack." "We are under attack," Captain Yang's voice replied through the ship's speakers. "Or rather, we will be soon. Chief, I recommend you evacuate all non-essential personnel from this facility." "Who is that?" Hyunwoo asked, looking around in confusion. "That's Captain Yang Minho," Nara explained. "He's human. The ship's crew has been in hibernation for 200 years. Hyunwoo stared at her as if she had lost her mind. "Humans are extinct." "Clearly not," Yang replied dryly. "Chief, what is your security situation? How many hegemony forces are stationed on this facility?" Why would you want to know that?" "Because in approximately 70 hours, several hundred human warships are going to arrive in this system. And based on what I'm learning about how our ship has been treated, I suspect the hegemony is not going to welcome us with open arms." Before anyone could respond, new alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts filled the air in multiple languages. All personnel report to emergency stations. Unknown energy signatures detected in the outer rim. Possible, hostile approach. This is not a drill. "It seems our fleet has been detected," Yang observed. "Computer, what is the composition of local hegemony forces?" "Scanning. I detect 1 heavy cruiser, 3 destroyers, and multiple patrol craft stationed at this facility. Additional forces are approaching from the hegemony core worlds." "Captain Yang," Jiho said urgently, "you need to understand something. The hegemony has been preparing for this possibility. They've always feared that humans might return. They're not going to negotiate." "What do you mean?" "I mean they're going to try to destroy your ship before your fleet arrives. They've been planning for this scenario for decades." As if summoned by Jiho's words, Ambassador Vexitai's voice echoed through the station's communication system. "Attention, all personnel. The human relic in the museum has been confirmed as an active threat. Hegemony forces are moving to secure and neutralize the vessel immediately. All civilians are ordered to evacuate the area." "Neutralize?" Yang's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Computer, what is the current status of our weapon systems?" "All primary systems are in standby mode. Weapons can be brought online in 30 minutes. However, Captain, we are currently docked inside a civilian facility." "Noted. Begin charging all systems, but do not activate weapons, and send a message to the approaching fleet. Tell them we may need immediate assistance." "Yang," a new voice said over the intercom. This was Commander Choi Suman, now fully awake and clearly in charge. "What's our situation?" "We're in a museum surrounded by aliens who think we're extinct and about to be attacked by something called the hegemony. Other than that, everything is perfectly normal." Despite the tension, Jiho found himself smiling at the human captain's dry humor. "Suman, we need to protect these researchers," Yang continued. "They've been trying to preserve our ship and learn about our culture. They're not our enemies." "Understood. What about evacuation?" "Impossible. The station is in lockdown. We're committed to this position." Through the museum's windows, they could see hegemony ships moving into attack formation. Around the station, the sleek, energy weapon-equipped vessels looked modern and deadly compared to the angular human warship. "Captain," Hyunwoo said nervously, "those are some of the most advanced ships in the galaxy. Your vessel is impressive, but it's 200 years old." "The technology gap," Chief, Yang interrupted. "Let me explain something about human engineering. We don't build ships to be the most advanced. We build them to survive. And this ship has survived everything the galaxy has thrown at it for 2 centuries. But there are 4 ships out there, and you're just one." "For now," Commander Suman said as she entered the computer core. The human woman was tall and lean with short black hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "But our fleet will be here soon." "How soon?" Nara asked. Not soon enough, Suman admitted. We need to hold out for at least 60 hours. Against 4 hegemony warships? Yanwu shook his head. It's impossible. Yang's voice came through the speakers again. Chief, you're thinking like someone who's never fought humans before. The hegemony is making the same mistake. What mistake? They think we're primitive. They think our weapons are outdated. They think our tactics are barbaric. Yang paused. They're about to learn why humanity survived when every other species in our region of space went extinct. New alarms sounded as the hegemony ships powered up their weapons. Energy signatures spiked across the scanner displays. All human ship, surrender immediately or face destruction, came Ambassador Vextai's voice over the communication channels. You are surrounded and outgunned. Commander Suman looked at the displays showing the 4 enemy ships surrounding the station. Then she looked at Jiho, Nara, and Hyunwoo. You 3 need to decide right now. You can try to evacuate and hope the hegemony doesn't consider you collaborators. Or you can stay here and see what happens when humanity fights back. What will happen? Nara asked quietly. Suman smiled, and for the first time Jiho understood why the galaxy had once feared humans. Something they're not prepared for, she said. Something they've never seen before. We're staying, Jiho said immediately. Nara and Hyunwoo nodded their agreement. Good, Yang's voice said from the speakers. Computer, signal the hegemony ships. Tell them we decline. The UES Defiance trembled as its ancient systems came online. Deep in the ship's core, reactors that had been silent for 2 centuries began generating massive amounts of power. The sound was like a sleeping giant taking its first breath. Commander, Choi Suman stood in the ship's command center, watching status displays that showed every system transitioning from hibernation to full combat readiness. Around her, crew members were emerging from their long sleep, moving with the practiced efficiency of soldiers who had trained for this moment their entire lives. Chief Engineer Bae Tai-hyun reporting for duty, came a voice from the engineering section. All primary systems are coming online. Reactor output at 60% and climbing. Dr. Yoon Jisoo here, another voice called from the medical bay. Crew revival is proceeding normally. No medical emergencies so far. Suman nodded, satisfied. Her people were professionals. 200 years of hibernation hadn't changed that. Captain Yang, what's our tactical situation? She asked. Yang's voice came from the ship's AI core. 4 hegemony vessels in attack formation around the station. They're powering weapons but haven't fired yet. I think they're waiting for orders. Good. That gives us time to complete our awakening sequence. Suman turned to look at Jiho, Nara, and Hyunwoo, who were watching everything with expressions of amazement and terror. You 3 should know what you're about to see. What do you mean? Jiho asked. For 200 years, your people have believed that human technology was primitive. Crude kinetic weapons, basic armor, simple computers. You've been very wrong. Suman walked to a wall panel and placed her hand on it. The metal seemed to ripple under her touch, flowing like liquid before reforming into a new configuration. Our ships aren't just machines, she explained. They're partners. The hull, the weapons, the life support systems, they're all partially organic. They learn, they adapt, they heal. That's impossible, Hyunwoo whispered. Metal can't be alive. Not metal, Dr. Yoon Jisoo said as she entered the command center. The ship's chief medical officer was a small woman with kind eyes and graying hair. Nanobiological hybrid material. We developed it during the final years before we left our home system. Left? Nara asked. I thought humans went extinct. We wanted everyone to think that. Yang's voice explained. When our sun started dying, we had 2 choices. Stay and fight over the remaining resources, or leave and find a new home. We chose to leave. But the hegemony found your system completely dead, Jiho protested. Because we wanted them to, Suman said. We destroyed everything we couldn't take with us, made it look like we'd killed ourselves in a massive war. It was easier than fighting the entire galaxy for the right to exist. Chief Engineer Bae Tae-hyun's voice crackled over the intercom. Commander, I'm reading massive energy spikes from the alien ships. I think they're about to attack. Understood. All stations, prepare for combat. Through the museum's windows, they could see the hegemony ships moving into final attack positions. Their sleek hulls gleamed in the light of Concordia Prime's artificial sun, and energy was building around their weapon systems. UES Defiance, this is Admiral Kethmori of the Hegemony 4th Fleet, came a new voice over the communication channels. You will power down immediately and prepare to be boarded, or we will open fire. Admiral, Suman replied calmly. This is Commander Choi Suman of the United Earth Space Navy. We are currently in neutral space aboard a civilian station. Any attack on this position would be considered an act of war against both humanity and the Galactic Council. Humanity is extinct, the Admiral replied coldly. You are thieves operating a stolen vessel. You have 30 seconds to surrender. Suman looked at her crew. Comments? I vote we show them exactly how extinct we are, Bai Taihyun said from engineering. Seconded, Dr. Yoon added. I'm tired of hiding. Yang's voice was thoughtful. The tactical situation is not ideal. We're outnumbered 4-1 and we're docked to a civilian station. But, Suman prompted, but they don't know what they're fighting. They think we're the same humans who left this galaxy 2 centuries ago. They're wrong. 30 seconds is up, Admiral Kethmori announced. Open fire. The first hegemony plasma bolt struck the UES Defiance directly in the forward section. The blast was powerful enough to destroy most ships, but the human vessel didn't even rock from the impact. Interesting, Suman observed, watching the tactical displays. Their plasma weapons are more advanced than I expected. Hull response? She asked. The nanobiological armor absorbed the impact and is already adapting, Bay reported. The next hit will be less effective. Excellent. Return fire. Target? Yang asked. Their lead cruiser. One shot. Let's get their attention. Deep in the ship's hull, weapon systems that the aliens had dismissed as primitive kinetic guns began to charge. But these weren't the simple railguns that the hegemony expected. The UES Defiance fired a single shot. The projectile that emerged from the ship's main gun was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It started as a simple metal slug, but as it traveled through space, it began to change. Nanobiological components activated, turning the projectile into something between a bullet and a living creature. The hegemony cruiser's energy shields, designed to stop plasma and laser weapons, might as well not have existed. The adaptive projectile passed through them as if they weren't there and struck the ship's hull. The result was devastating. The projectile didn't just punch through the armor. It began converting the ship's own materials, spreading through the hull like a technological virus. Within seconds, the entire forward section of the cruiser was dark and powerless. What? What did you do to my ship? Admiral Kethmori's voice was filled with shock and growing terror. We shot it, Suman replied simply. Would you like us to do it again? All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel, the Admiral screamed. Destroy it now! The 3 remaining hegemony ships opened fire with everything they had. Plasma bolts, laser beams, and particle cannons struck the UES Defiance from multiple directions. The human ship absorbed it all. Hull status? Suman asked calmly. We're actually getting stronger, Bay reported with obvious satisfaction. The nanobiological systems are absorbing their energy and incorporating it into our own power grid. You mean their attacks are charging our batteries? Among other things. The armor is also analyzing their weapons and developing specific countermeasures. Jiho stared at the displays in amazement. You're not just fighting them, you're learning from them. That's the idea, Dr. Yoon explained. Human technology doesn't just resist threats. It adapts to them, overcomes them, and becomes stronger because of them. Fire again, Suman ordered. 2 ships this time. The UES Defiance fired twice in rapid succession. Both shots found their targets, and 2 more hegemony ships went dark as their systems were overwhelmed by the adaptive nanobiological attack. This is impossible, Admiral Kethmori shouted over the communications. Our weapons should be tearing you apart. Admiral, Yang's voice replied. You've been studying our technology for 200 years. But you never understood it. You saw kinetic weapons and assumed they were primitive. You saw thick armor and assumed it was crude. You saw basic computers and assumed we were behind the times. The last hegemony ship tried to retreat, but the UES Defiance was faster than it looked. The human ship disconnected from the station and began pursuit, its engines producing thrust levels that should have been impossible for a vessel of its size. "How are you moving that fast?" the Admiral demanded. "Nanobiological enhanced propulsion," Bay explained cheerfully. "The engines adapt their output based on tactical requirements. Right now, they're requiring a lot." The fleeing hegemony ship didn't make it far. A third shot from the UES Defiance ended the battle, leaving all 4 enemy vessels floating helpless in space. "This is Admiral Kethmori," came a weak transmission from the lead cruiser. I surrender. Please don't destroy us." Suman considered for a moment. "Admiral, your ships are disabled, not destroyed. Your crews are alive. That was intentional." "I don't understand. You attacked us because you thought we were primitive and violent. We're showing you that we're neither. We could have killed all of you, but we chose not to." "Why?" "Because that's what civilized people do," Dr. Yoon answered. "We defend ourselves, but we don't commit genocide, even against people who were trying to commit genocide against us." Yang's voice came over the open channel. "Admiral, we're going to provide medical assistance to your crews and temporary power to your life support systems. In return, you're going to send a message to your superiors." "What message?" "Tell them that humanity has returned. Tell them we're not the same species that left this galaxy 2 centuries ago. And tell them that anyone who wants to coexist peacefully will be welcomed." "Anyone who doesn't!" The UES Defiance's weapon systems powered up again just for a moment, just long enough to make the point. "Anyone who doesn't will face the consequences," Suman finished. Back in the museum, Jiho was staring at the displays that showed the human ship's capabilities. The technology was beyond anything he had imagined possible. "How?" he asked simply. 200 years of isolation," Yang explained. 200 years of having to survive in the void between galaxies with limited resources. It forced us to develop technology that could adapt, repair itself, and become stronger. The news of humanity's return spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours of the battle at Concordia Prime, every major news network was broadcasting the impossible story. The extinct humans were alive. Their technology was far beyond anything the galaxy had seen, and they had just defeated a hegemony battle group without breaking a sweat. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Commander Choi Suman watched the incoming reports with grim satisfaction. She had expected panic, but the scale of the galaxy's reaction surprised even her. 17 different species have declared emergency sessions of their governing bodies, Yang reported from his AI core. The Galactic Council is demanding an immediate meeting, and the hegemony— "What about the hegemony?" Suman asked. "They're mobilizing everything they have. Admiral Kethmori's report has reached their high command. They're calling for what they term preventive action against the human threat." Dr. Yoon Jisoo looked up from her medical station. "How many ships are they gathering?" "Current estimates suggest over 10,000 vessels from multiple species under hegemony control," Yang replied. "They're pulling ships from every sector they control." 10,000? Jiho's voice cracked. With disbelief. He and Nara had been helping catalog the human ship's capabilities for the past 12 hours. And even with everything they'd learned, the numbers seemed impossible. "It's not as bad as it sounds," Suman said calmly. "Most of those ships are patrol craft and transports. Maybe 3,000 are actual combat vessels." "Only 3,000, Nara muttered. "Against how many human ships?" "Our first wave fleet includes 300 ships," Chief Engineer Bae Tai-hyun said as he entered the bridge. "But those numbers don't tell the whole story." "What do you mean?" Hyunwoo asked. The security chief had been frantically trying to coordinate with station authorities while also learning about human military doctrine. "Show them," Suman ordered. Bae activated the main display, which showed a tactical readout of the approaching human fleet. To alien eyes, the ships looked similar to the UES Defiance, angular, heavily armed, and somewhat crude compared to the flowing designs favored by other species. These ships represent 200 years of evolution in isolation, Bay explained. Every system has been redesigned from the ground up. Every weapon has been improved. Every piece of armor has been enhanced. But more importantly, Yang added, every ship can communicate with every other ship instantaneously. They don't just fight as individual vessels, they fight as a single organism. Explain, Jiho requested, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. Traditional space combat involves individual ships maneuvering and firing independently, Suman said. Human combat doctrine is different. Our ships share targeting data, coordinate movements, and adapt tactics in real time. Fighting 300 human ships isn't like fighting 300 individual vessels. It's like fighting one incredibly large, incredibly smart warship. Before anyone could respond, new alarms sounded throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts filled the air in multiple languages. Attention all personnel. Large fleet signatures detected at the edge of the system, unknown vessels approaching at high speed. This is not a drill. That would be our reinforcements, Sumin observed with satisfaction. How fast are they moving? Nara asked, checking her instruments. Faster than should be possible, Yang replied. Our propulsion technology has improved significantly since the UES Defiance was built. Through the station's observation windows, they could see points of light appearing in the distance. As the ships grew closer, their true size became apparent. Each vessel was massive, dwarfing even the largest hegemony dreadnoughts. My God, Hyunwoo whispered. How big are those ships? The smallest is about 1,200 meters, Bay said, casually. The largest is just over 3 kilometers. 3 kilometers? Jiho stared at the approaching fleet in amazement. How is that even possible? When you're building ships in the void between galaxies, size limitations become less important, Dr. Yoon explained. Larger ships are actually more efficient for long-range operations. The lead ship of the human fleet was establishing communication with Concordia Prime. The voice that came through the speakers was crisp and professional. Concordia Prime Station, this is Admiral Ko Jin-wan of the UN's Phoenix. We are requesting permission to dock and establish diplomatic contact with local authorities. Admiral Ko, Suman said, activating her communication system. This is Commander Suman aboard the UES Defiance. Welcome to Concordia Prime. Suman? Good to hear your voice. What's our situation? We've made first contact with several local species. 3 of them have been extremely helpful. The hegemony, however, has declared us a threat and is mobilizing their entire fleet. Understood. Are you and your crew safe? For now. But Admiral, you should know that the locals have been using our ship as a museum exhibit for the past 2 centuries. They believed we were extinct. A long pause. A museum exhibit? They've been giving tours, mocking human technology as primitive and barbaric, using us as an example of why violence leads to extinction. Another pause. Longer this time. I see. Well, I suppose we'll have to correct some misconceptions. As the human fleet took up positions around Concordia Prime, representatives from dozens of alien species began arriving at the station. The Galactic Council had called an emergency session to deal with the human situation. This is unprecedented, Nara said, watching the diplomatic shuttles arrive. The Council hasn't moved this fast on anything in over 50 years. Fear is a powerful motivator, Yang observed. They're afraid of what we represent. What do we represent? Jiho asked. Change, Suman replied simply. For 2 centuries, the galaxy has been stable. The hegemony controlled most of the major trade routes and resource systems. Smaller species accepted their place in the hierarchy. Everyone knew where they stood. And now? Now there's a new player in the game, one that doesn't fit into their existing power structure. Admiral Ko Jin-wan's shuttle docked with the station 2 hours later. He was a tall man with graying hair and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. With him came 2 other humans who would play crucial roles in the coming negotiations. Counselor An Seola, our chief diplomat. The Admiral introduced the first, a middle-aged woman with a calm demeanor and sharp intelligence. Ambassador Kang Woojin, our military liaison, he said, indicating the second, a younger man whose expression suggested he had little patience for diplomatic niceties. "What's our diplomatic status?" Counselor An asked, as soon as the introductions were complete. "Complicated," Nara replied. "Most species are confused and frightened. Some are genuinely interested in establishing peaceful relations. The hegemony wants to destroy you before you can establish a foothold in this galaxy. And the Galactic Council? They're meeting now to decide how to respond to your return," Jiho explained. "But the Council has limited power. They can make recommendations, but they can't force member species to follow them." Ambassador Kang looked disgusted. "So we're supposed to beg for permission to exist in our own galaxy?" "This isn't our galaxy anymore," Counselor An said firmly. "We left. These species have built their own civilization in our absence. We need to find a way to fit into what exists now. Or we could remind them why they were afraid of us in the first place," Kang replied coldly. "Enough," Admiral Ko said. "Both approaches have merit, but our first priority is establishing communication with the Council. Can that be arranged?" "I can make the request," Nara offered. "As museum curator, I have some standing with the Council administration." "Do it." While Nara worked on arranging the meeting, Yang's voice came over the intercom with disturbing news. "Admiral, I'm monitoring hegemony communications. They're not just mobilizing their fleet. They're spreading propaganda about the human threat throughout their territory." "What kind of propaganda?" Dr. Yoon asked. "They're claiming that humans are planning to conquer the galaxy and enslave all other species. They're saying that human technology is too dangerous to be allowed to exist." "Are they getting support?" Suman wanted to know. "Some species are buying into it," Yang admitted. "Fear of the unknown is powerful, but others are questioning whether the hegemony is telling the truth." Ambassador Kang slammed his fist on a nearby console. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. They're going to turn the entire galaxy against us before we even have a chance to explain ourselves." "Not the entire galaxy," Jiho said quietly. "Some of us remember that humans were never the aggressors. Your species was known for being protective of smaller, weaker civilizations. You remember?" Admiral Ko asked with surprise. "Not personally," Jiho clarified, "but I've spent years studying the historical records. Before humans disappeared, they were often the ones who stood up to bullies. You protected species that couldn't protect themselves. That's what got us into trouble in the first place," Counselor An said sadly. "We made too many enemies by interfering in conflicts that weren't technically our business." "But you saved a lot of people," Nara added. "The records show that human intervention prevented at least dozen genocides." Before anyone could respond, emergency alarms sounded throughout the station once again. This time, the cause became immediately apparent as massive hegemony ships began emerging from hyperspace. "Yang analysis?" Admiral Ko demanded. "I count over 2,000. The space around Concordia Prime filled with the largest fleet assembly in galactic history. Over 2,000 hegemony ships formed attack formations, their sleek hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. They represented dozens of species, all united under hegemony command and convinced that humanity posed an existential threat to their way of life. Facing them were 300 human vessels, dark and angular against the starfield. To most observers, the odds seemed impossibly stacked against the humans. They were outnumbered nearly 7-1. They were also about to demonstrate why numbers didn't always matter. On the bridge of the UENS Phoenix, Fleet Admiral Seo Jun-hyuk stood calmly before the main tactical display. He was an older man, his hair completely gray, but his eyes held the sharpness of someone who had spent decades preparing for this moment. "Fleet status report," he requested. "All ships report ready. For combat," his aide replied. "Nanobiological systems are fully integrated. Adaptive protocols are active. Dr. Lim Jiwon, what's the status of our special project?" Dr. Lim, a small woman with tired eyes, looked up from her console. "The Phoenix weapon system is fully charged and ready for deployment. But Admiral, once we use it, there's no going back. The galaxy will know exactly what we're capable of." "I think it's time they knew," the Admiral replied grimly. In the museum aboard Concordia Prime, Jiho, Nara, and Hyunwoo watched the developing battle from the bridge of the UES Defiance. Commander Suman and her crew were providing tactical analysis, while Admiral Ko coordinated with the fleet. The hegemony ships are moving into standard attack formation, Yang observed. They're planning a coordinated assault using concentrated plasma fire. Will it work? Nara asked nervously. Against any other species? Probably, Suman replied. Against us? They're about to learn the difference between fighting enemies and fighting humans. The hegemony fleet opened fire first. Over 2,000 ships unleashed their weapons simultaneously, creating a wall of energy that should have been sufficient to destroy any force in the galaxy. The human fleet didn't even attempt to dodge. Instead, something impossible happened. As the plasma bolts and laser beams struck the human ships, the vessels seemed to absorb the energy. Their hulls glowed brighter as the attacks hit them, and their own weapons began charging faster. What's happening? Hyunwoo demanded, staring at the tactical displays. Nanobiological energy conversion, Bae Taehyun explained with obvious pride. Our ships don't just resist energy weapons, they eat them. The more they shoot at us, the stronger we get, Dr. Yoon added. It's one of our more elegant innovations. The human fleet began its counterattack, but instead of individual ships firing individual weapons, something unprecedented occurred. All 300 vessels fired simultaneously, their shots coordinated. With perfect precision, the result was devastating. Instead of 300 separate attacks, the human fleet delivered what was essentially a single, massive strike that overwhelmed the hegemony formation. Dozens of enemy ships were disabled in the first volley, their systems overloaded by adaptive nanobiological weapons that turned their own technology against them. Impossible, came Supreme Admiral Kethvari's voice over the communication channels. No species can coordinate that precisely. Supreme Admiral, Fleet Admiral Seo replied calmly. You're not fighting a species. You're fighting an organism. Every human ship is connected to every other human ship. We don't just coordinate our attacks. We share our consciousness. What does that mean? The hegemony commander demanded. It means you're not fighting 300 ships, you're fighting one ship with 300 bodies. To prove his point, the human fleet executed a maneuver that should have been impossible. All 300 vessels moved as one, turning and accelerating in perfect synchronization. They formed a new attack pattern that resembled a living creature, more than a military formation. The second human attack was even more precise than the first. Adaptive projectiles found their targets with uncanny accuracy, and disabled hegemony ships found their own systems turning against them as nanobiological components spread through their hulls. This is Captain Ryu Hyun aboard the UN's Phoenix, came a new voice. All hegemony vessels, you have 30 seconds to surrender before we deploy our primary weapon. Primary weapon? Kethvari's voice was growing desperate. What primary weapon? You'll see, Captain Ryu replied ominously. On Concordia Prime. The observers watched as the massive human flagship began to change. Its hull was shifting, components moving and reconfiguring themselves into new arrangements. What's it doing? Jiho asked in amazement. Something we've never had to use before, Admiral Ko replied from his position on the UES Defiance. Something we hoped we'd never have to use. The UEN's Phoenix was transforming. The ship's nanobiological systems were rearranging its entire structure, turning it from a warship into something that looked more like a living organism. Organic-looking appendages extended from its hull, and energy began building around them in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Lim, Fleet Admiral Seo said quietly, "You may fire when ready." "Sir," Dr. Lim replied, her finger hovering over the activation control. "Once I do this, every species in the galaxy will fear us. Better feared than extinct," the Admiral said firmly. Dr. Lim pressed the control. What happened next redefined the very concept of space warfare. The UENS Phoenix didn't fire a weapon in any traditional sense. Instead, it released something that could only be described as controlled evolution. A wave of nanobiological energy spread out from the human flagship, washing over the hegemony fleet. Where it touched enemy ships, those vessels began to change. Their weapons stopped working. Their shields failed. Their engines shut down, but the ships themselves weren't destroyed, they were converted. My ship, Supreme Admiral Kethvari's voice was filled with horror as he watched his own vessel's systems begin responding to human commands. What have you done to my ship? We've given it the gift of evolution, Dr. Lim replied. Your vessels are now part of our fleet. Your crews are unharmed, but your ships answer to us now. In the span of 10 minutes, the largest fleet in galactic history had been completely neutralized. Not destroyed, not damaged, but converted. Over 2,000 ships now flew human colors and responded to human commands. This is impossible, Kethvari whispered. This level of technology. It's beyond anything we imagined. Supreme Admiral, Fleet Admiral Seo said gently, your species spent 2 centuries believing that humans were primitive and violent. You were wrong on both counts. We are neither primitive nor needlessly violent, but we are very, very good at surviving. What do you want from us? The hegemony commander asked in defeat. We want peace, Counselor Anciola said, taking over the communication. We want to coexist. We want to build something better than the galaxy that existed before. And if we refuse, then you'll discover what happens when humans stop being patient, Ambassador Kang Woo-jin interjected coldly. But it was Dr. Yoon who provided the answer that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Supreme Admiral, you have a choice. You can work with us to build a future where all species can thrive, or you can continue to fight us and discover that we've had 200 years to perfect the art of war. Look around you, Fleet Admiral Seo added. Your entire fleet has been neutralized without a single casualty. We could have destroyed every ship and killed every crew member. We chose not to. That should tell you something about who we are. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not just returned to the galaxy. They had evolved beyond anything any species had imagined possible. Their technology was so advanced that they could convert enemy fleets instead of destroying them. Their coordination was so perfect that they fought as a single organism. Their power was so overwhelming that they had neutralized the largest military force in galactic history without firing a single lethal shot. What happens now? Jiho asked quietly from his position on the UES Defiance. Now we rebuild, Admiral Ko replied. We take everything that was wrong with the old galaxy and we fix it. The hegemony's control is broken, Sumian observed. Dozens of species are going to be free for the first time in centuries. Some of them won't know what to do with that freedom, Nara pointed out. Then we'll help them learn, Dr. Yoon said, simply. That's what humans do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. Over the next several hours, humanity began demonstrating exactly what they meant by rebuilding the galaxy. The converted hegemony ships were returned to their original crews, but with one crucial difference. The nanobiological modifications remained, providing advanced defensive systems and communication capabilities that linked them to the human fleet. We're not conquering you, Fleet Admiral Seo explained to the assembled alien commanders. We're offering you partnership. Your ships are now protected by our technology. Your crews are now part of our communication network. You can choose to work with us, or you can choose to return to your home systems and live in peace. And if we choose to fight you again, one brave hegemony captain asked, then your own ships will stop you. Captain Ryu replied matter-of-factly. The nanobiological systems we've installed have safety protocols. They won't allow you to commit acts of genocide or unprovoked aggression. You're controlling our ships. We're preventing